My name is Aaron Aquino-Annobil. My age is, I'm 31 years old. My pronouns are he and him. I was born in Montreal, and then I moved to Toronto of Christmas of '99. I studied early childhood education at Centennial and Ryerson. And then from there, I transferred to York, and then I ended up taking French as like my main studies, and then also education with that. And I became a French teacher for about 5 years. My partner and I decided to take the artist route and then become like full-time artists. So we're both dancers, choreographers, and also dance teachers. But we also run a dance program for adults called Run the Flex, and that's been the main focus right now. My mom is Filipino, and my dad is Ghanaian from West Africa. Every time I say Ghanaian, I always either get like Guyanese, Grenadian. I'm like, no, like West Africa, Nigeria's neighbor, aka Gold Coast. I love to call that Black Stars. Yeah, my mom is a baby boomer, and she has 15 siblings. So, and she's the oldest out of the 15. So her upbringing was a lot more about, she was like part of like the civil rights within the Philippines, and then she had to leave because like her siblings were also like in danger because of knowing my mom and things. And she was also a teacher at that time too. So she moved to Hong Kong with one of my other aunts, so one of her siblings, and then from there she moved to Montreal with another sibling. So there's so many siblings. There was the one in Hong Kong, and then I had 2 aunts that lived in Montreal, and they're like, all right, we're gonna help her get her visa and get her actual citizenship to Canada. So she went from Hong Kong, spending, I think it was about like a year or 2 in Hong Kong, and then moved to Montreal from there. And for my dad, growing up in Ghana, it wasn't the best back then. A lot of Ghanaians would go to Amsterdam, would all go to like Germany. That was like always like the middle point for Ghanaians. Like they'd go to Germany and then go to like either Europe or go to the States or Canada. So for my dad, he went to Germany. He went to Amsterdam. There he studied German languages, and then he also had a scholarship for soccer. And then one year he actually injured his foot really badly that he couldn't play soccer anymore. And then he just decided, he's like, you know what, I think it's my time to like leave. And then he decided to go to Montreal instead of the States. And I was like, okay, say less. And lo and behold, my dad was actually best friends with my mom's sister, and that's how they met. Because in Montreal, the biggest thing that I was very surprised, because like, we'll get into like that topic after, but it's like in Montreal, like when immigrants move there, they have to take French courses. Like you have to take French, not just English, but you have to take French courses as well. So that struggle of learning 2 languages while you have your native tongue was like mind-boggling. But like, yeah, my dad and my aunt met during one of their French courses, became best friends. And then my teacher was like, yo, I'm gonna hook you up with someone, and lo and behold, it's my sister. Gang. And then you got Aaron, yes. But it took a lot of time, because it was like, out of the 15 siblings, 5 of them are now in Canada. 5 out of the 15 are now in Canada. But that took like almost 10 plus years to get every single one of them to get here. And it's like, even like, what was it? I think my Tito, my mom's brother-in-law, had to live with us for like a year and a half before he could even get like all my cousins and my Tito to come to Canada too. So it's like, the process is heavy. Like, why is it so, it's hard, and it costs a lot too. It's not just like, okay, let's sign up and then hopefully I'll get the papers to go there. It's like, yo, you gotta make X amount of money per person just to get here first. And then they gotta wait how many years before you could even become a Canadian citizen? Like, that is wild. That is, yeah. I have 4 sisters. I'm the only boy. Yep. How did I survive? I'd say I was treated like the prince, obviously, because I was the only boy. So we grew up in Montreal. There's one part of Montreal called Park Extension, Park X. it was, at the time, it was considered the Greek community of Montreal. And it was just very multicultural, like Haitians, a lot of Tamil, like Sri Lankans, so a lot of Sinhalese or Tamils, and Greeks were like the main like community of this area. Now it feels like as if I'm in the slums. Like when I went back one day, I was like, whoa, this is the hood now. Okay. But yeah, growing up, it was just a lot of music, a lot of dancing. My dad was a radio host in Montreal, so I'd always go with him on the weekend to his station and just like listen to all the music he would play. He was a reggae host, so like reggae was like a big thing. So it was just wild to see like a lot of cassette tapes, and I'm talking about the cassette with the pencil where you gotta rewind it back. I hated that because that was my job for him at the radio station. He'd be like, can you rewind it? I was like, okay, and I'd just rewind it. So yeah, there'd be a lot of music, a lot of dancing. Same thing with like my mom's side, always going to the fam jams, listening to karaoke, joining in the karaoke, obviously playing Phil Collins, because Phil Collins had to be played like 15 times as usual. I was lucky. And I think too, my 3 older sisters are my half sisters. So like, they're my dad's first kids. So like they were introduced to my life when I was about 5. So for like 5 years, I thought I was like the big bro, and then lo and behold, I wanted like a bigger sibling because I had a lot of friends that had older siblings, and lo and behold, my dad was like, actually, you have 3 older sisters, and they're gonna move in with us. And I was like, say less, let's do this. I was like, yo, they're sisters. So like, yeah, normally people are like, they're like, oh, they're your sisters? I'm like, they're my sisters. I never like saying half sisters or anything. I'm like, family is family. There's no, like, why would I want to, like, keep on labeling them a different thing? They're my sisters at the end of the day. To witness both cultures, but then there was definitely a point where it's like, my parents definitely made the choice where it's like, okay, I think Aaron's going to become like a Catholic. So that's when I had to go to like Sunday school during mass and then get my first communion. And then, but the thing was like, especially the church we went to, it was the full Filipino church. Like, yo, the full Filipino church, like the mass was in Tagalog. Like it was epic. It was very hard, but it was epic because I couldn't understand everything. But luckily it's like, I had friends, I made friends, and they're like, oh, okay, like you could do this, like, or you could hear this, and like, this is what they're saying. And I'm like, oh, at least I get a little thing from it. Yeah, it's just, I'd say, yeah, I was always like the black unicorn in the group, especially when it came to that stuff, like the upbringing side. There's always this like this dumb notion. It's like, choose one, and I'm like, how do I choose one if I'm both, right? It's like, could go with the Filipinos, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're too black. And then you go with the Ghanaians, but oh, you're pretty Asian. And you're like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But I'd say it was more like through my cousins or like family, like the other kids, like on my mom's side, and then cousins on my dad's side. Like if I'd play ball with my cousins on my dad's side, they're like, yo, you play like a Filipino. And then I go to like the Filipino side and we play ball, and it's like, oh, you play like a black kid. I was like, what? What does that even mean? Like, I don't know. I'm playing just the way I play. But it was cool because like I didn't really feel that. It wasn't with family that I felt that separation. But the fact, like, it was more of like people of my age that I felt that difference, right? And I'd say it's like the same thing. Like, yeah, it was like the adults were all like, oh, this is Aaron. Like, Aaron's just chilling. He's cool. And like, I had a lot of family members, like on both sides that are like, that's family. Like, they never looked at like my skin tone as like something that's like, oh, he's off or something, or like, oh, he's not like us. Because at the end of the day, it's like, also like on my mom's side, technically, like even pigmentation is such a big thing because they are 15 different shades. They all look the same, but they're all 15 different shades. Like I have a tita that is my skin tone, but she looks like my mom. That's where I tripped out. I was like, whoa, I got a dark-skinned Filipino tita that looks like my mom and looks like me. Like, that is sick. Like, that was actually cool. So it's like, yeah. But overall, yeah, it was more of like a societal thing with like other people, like outside sources that would like make me feel different, but never my family. That was the one thing that we made sure. Yeah, I knew for a fact they would never want to try and put that on me. There was a lot of times where I'd like bottle it up. I'd just be like, or if it's like, if it was someone I didn't know and they would make a comment, I would put them on blast. Apparently, yeah, what was it? I was watching this Wu-Tang documentary on Crave. It's so good. But RZA, yeah, the RZA says that our tongue is like a double-edged sword. So it's our actual weapon. Like, the words that come out of our mouth are very powerful. Yeah, I try and like, yeah, there's like certain times where I was like, I don't even like to think about that side, or it's just because they're like, why am I putting energy on certain things that do not matter in my life, right? It's like, if like family, friends, my environment matters, and there's this outside source, which I just met in like the first 5 minutes of that time, they're pointless. Like, it's not meant to be within my universe. Like, just shut down. Be a fucking legend, the man of mankind. Set a black man in the Illuminati. Last time I checked, that was the biggest racist parties. Cause we belong to slave ships, got our own pyramids, write our own hieroglyphs. Just call that shit high power. In the beginning of the pandemic, like when the whole BLM movement was happening, I was like, #bin. I was like, just #bin. Like, that's not new. It's like not new news for like for me per se, but it was like, I was talking to Nicole, my partner, about this. It was like, she would ask me questions like, so how did your parents talk to you about, you know, you being like a BIPOC? Like, you're both Filipino and Black. And my mom used to always say this big thing. She'd be like, Anak, even though you're Filipino, the world's gonna see you Black. And I was like, whoa. And like, I was like, that was cool. Like, now that I think about it, I'm like, my mom was ready. Like, she was ready for it. Because like, what was it? Back in Montreal, there was a lot of Black, half Black, half Filipino kids. Like, I had a bunch of half Black, like even Ghanaian Filipinos in Montreal. I was like, yeah, like we all squat up. We're like besties, gang, gang, gang. And then it was like, but like, we always had the talks. It's like, oh, but they're always going to look at us like our shade. They're always going to look at our skin. And that was like the biggest thing that I always kept in mind. And then my dad would always say the exact same thing. It's like, the world will never know that you're half Filipino. They'll know because of your skin tone. And he said, like, he didn't say like in a way, it's like, so that means you have to step your game up. He's like, just be ready. Like growing up, I wasn't allowed to braid my hair. If I did, my dad would be like, you look like one of those thugs, but then you're going to get pulled over by the cops, blah, blah, blah. And lo and behold, one day, my rebellious ass self was like, I'm going to braid my hair, do what I want to do. I'll pierce my ear. And the next thing you know, I got pulled over like 3 times by the cops, like in my own neighborhood. They're like, is your name DeAndre? I'm like, do I look like a DeAndre? No, I'm not a DeAndre. It's like, we're looking for someone like you. I was like, whoa, that is wild. But no, I'm just walking to school. Like, what do you mean? Like, what am I doing? But yeah, those little things, especially like growing up in Rexdale, it's like, I even noticed it. It's like, I was lucky enough to even get a job within my neighborhood. So like, the elementary school I taught in was in my neighborhood. It wasn't the school I went to, but it was literally down the block. So I knew the kids. And I also ran a few after school programs with the Boys and Girls Club, like in my earlier years, like my earlier teen into my early 20s. Yeah, so we ran like after school programs, and like within that environment alone, it's like, imagine taking a bunch of like teenagers or kids down the subway to go to Nathan Phillips Square, and you get the eyes watching. And then I would be like, okay. And then like all these kids would be like, why are they staring at me like this? Why are they doing that? And so I'd have to give them the talk. And like, that is where like my heart would do this a lot. Like, I'd just be like, yo, you shouldn't be going through that right now. You shouldn't be going through that. Or if the teens are obviously being wild, but they're always going to be wild on the subway. They always chat too loud. Like, that's natural. It's normal for them. But I'd have to give them the talk as well, being like, yo, the world's gonna look at you differently. Outside of Rexdale, you ain't in Rexdale anymore. They're already gonna see A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, they're gonna see all of these things, and it's up to us to go against that and prove them wrong, right? So that's, especially my work environment was like one of the things I was like, okay, I got to do all these things. Like, I got to figure out how to like maintain this. When it came to like professionalism, especially in the workplace, it was pretty easy, because it was just like, for me, it was like I was already at home. So it's easier for me to like actually talk to my students and like talk on a realer note, compared to like, well, it's Mr. Aquino-Annobil here. Like, let's talk about Black History Month. Let's do this and that. It was like, all right, so today we're going to talk about Black History Month. And it's like my tone even would change, right? But there was like one moment that will forever hit me. And it was the Minister of Education at the time came to visit the school, and this was, I think, my 4th year of uni, and I was a student teacher. But he stopped me and he's like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm studying French education right now. And he's like, well, I don't want to be racist, but just know, it's like, you're gonna get a job because we need Black male French teachers. I was like, so are we just trying to like check mark a bunch of stuff? And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, no, but you're gonna get the job. And I was like, thanks, question mark? Like, I was like, okay. And then just walk away. And I was like, wow. So even what my parents said still runs, even after like getting such education, like all these different tier levels, and it's still gonna be there no matter what, right? So yeah, that was like definitely some of the few things that have stuck with me through like the workforce. Now I'm just going accordingly to what I follow, like love one another, like treat everyone equal no matter what. And it's like everyone's path is different, but that doesn't mean I get to judge them. And it's like that's been like the core values that we've implemented within to run the Flex, right? Where anybody can dance. It's not just for the dancers. Like, you can two-step, all right, don't know how to two-step, I'm gonna teach you how to two-step. We're gonna do this, right? So it's like all these little things and just using it within what we're doing. I never thought about it as tokenism. I was just like, that in my head, I was like especially being in my 4th year, and I was like, that means I'm gonna graduate and get a job immediately. Because for teaching at the time, like, this was what, this is like 2011, 2012. Teachers weren't getting jobs. There weren't that many teachers, and like and there was like such a high demand for French teachers at that time too. So what happened was, I had a bunch of like older friends that like graduated like teachers college and everything. I was also doing concurrent. So like within my 4 years of school, within my last 2 years, I was doing teacher college at the exact same time as doing my undergrad. And so that was friggin' stressful. And I was dancing too. I don't know how I survived. But then, but it wasn't until like they would explain to me this, like, yeah, I graduated last year, been waiting, I'm on the waiting list for a year now, I don't know if I'm gonna get a job. And I was like, oh shoot, like, am I in the right career right now? And then I was just lucky enough to actually know somebody in the inside to get me a position to get that job. And then, yeah, it's like there's a lot of female teachers, but there aren't that many male, Black, and that can teach French. So I was like, in my head, I was like, okay, I'm trying to get the job because I'm trying to fit that criteria that's needed. Not thinking about like, hold on, wait a minute, what? Wait, you're just gonna give me the job because I'm a guy? Because I could teach French and I'm Black? Like, that's it? That's stupid. So you're not even looking at my credentials. You're looking at like the whole exterior. Like within the educational system, it's not like there's already the marginalized set of like, oh, if a kid doesn't meet the criteria, fail them immediately, right? But what that means is like, if they can't do it within X amount of time, they can't do it, right? So it's like, I knew a lot of children that's like, they can't do it, or they can't fully learn everything with like let's say in 2 months. But if you gave them like 2.5 months, they will get it. But because I had to like make sure like all of their work was fit within that 2 months, it would like break my heart to like be like, oh man, I wish I could give you that extra 2 weeks just to like get it, and then you got it. But then it's like I had to follow the rules and be like, I'm sorry, but you gotta fail. And it was like the biggest thing, right? I'd say for me, it's like I never like telling people like, I'm like, you can't do this, or like, you're not good enough for this. Everyone has their own path and time that it takes for them to accomplish something. So for everyone to be generalized into one thing or one criteria and be like, okay, everyone is going to be great in this because it's going to take everyone 2 months, not knowing that everyone's learning capabilities are different, right? So yeah, that was like the biggest thing. And at the same time, I was also teaching at the underground, and so I'd leave work, go to the underground. So I'd be like at the school from like 8 to 3, take the TTC all the way to downtown, and then teach classes, and I was drained by the end. But then it was cool too, because I started like noticing that I would take like certain things from my teaching and then implement it to dance, and I was like, oh my gosh, this actually works. Like it really works. It was great. And especially if it's something I like to do a lot, then I might as well go with it, right? But then obviously I had my partner to help me. She like career like path me on the way. She's like, you got to get ready, you got to do A, B, and C to make sure that we can do the great transition for you to go from like a full-time position to being self-employed and like make it work from there. A few of my friends and I, we started working with the Halton School Board. So Oakville and then like down that south direction. So we started teaching a lot of dance classes as a physical activity to within the school board. So we were partnering with them for like 2 years pre-pandemic. It was sick because we just teach these kids for like an hour, but we like go from school to school to school like in a few days. And then we also like did a few work with like mentally disabled kids and like working with them too. That partnership was like, okay, they're like, you're a teacher too. I was like, oh yeah. And like I actually met some of like my old friends like from university, and I was like, oh my gosh, you teach at this school? They're like, yo, you're a dance teacher now? Like what the heck? I was like, you know, it worked out for the best. So maybe like back in the future, post-pandemic, like we get back to it and like we're going to continue doing that, because yeah, dance itself is therapy. It's a big therapy, and we've noticed it, especially because we've been teaching kids from junior kindergarten all the way to high school, like to grade 12. And like, you can see that for every single child, it's like, it changes them within that hour. Between that 30 minutes to an hour, you could see like their spirits are being uplifted, and they're like, oh, I could do this. Like, I am a dancer. And I was like, chill out. I'm like, chill out. You know, you still got to train, but like, yes, you can dance. But yeah. It's always going to be, I feel like every generation, it's like kids are learning a lot faster than the previous generation. Like there are things that I remember from like when I was in grade 5 and I hear kids in grade 3 talk about it. I'm like, hold on a second, what is going on? How do you know about that? And I'm like, oh yeah, social media, internet, like the explosion of information just being thrown at everyone right now is happening. So it makes sense. It's bad if there's no guidance behind it. You know what I mean? If the conversation is not happening between both children, like parent and child, or like adult and child, or like older sibling and child, to really get an understanding of it. It's when it's just like whatever you see is what you get, and that's the information you get, compared to getting multiple like different point of views of it. That's where like the little thing is, right? If nobody has a conversation, then that one way of thinking is gonna like change them forever. And I'd say that's the biggest con. It's like if there's no guidance whatsoever. The pros behind it though is that they actually get to understand things, but it also builds up that conversation between the parent and the child too, right? Right now, the biggest hobby I'd say is collecting shoes. Such a thing. Growing up, it was a lot of, I was the Pokemon cards, the Yu-Gi-Ohs, the Beyblades. I had all of them. And like, yeah, I also collected hockey cards. And the first one technically I'd say was like, when it came to like collecting and hobbies, was Hot Wheels. Like my dad used to get me Hot Wheels like every week, like as like it would be like we'd always get like reports on like how we did at school throughout the week, and then like at the end, like on the Friday, I'd have to give it to my dad, and then he'd like read it and he's like, all right, let's go to the store. And I'm like, yes, I get a Hot Wheels. And then I had like a whole bucket of them. For my hobbies now, it's still technically, I'd say dancing, video games. I'm now into 2K. I love 2K. I didn't like 2K in the beginning, but then now I like 2K a lot. And when I say 2K, I'm talking about NBA 2K21. I was like, okay, this game, I like it. I like it a lot. It was like my pandemic game, like during COVID. Yeah, during the lockdown, video games kept me sane. Anime kept me sane. Like, oh, I love my anime like crazy. And yeah, I don't draw anymore or paint, but when we first moved to our like new place, that's when I started painting again, and then I haven't gone back into it, but it's a little hobby I like to do here and there. Technically, okay, well, so even though dance has been around like technically like my whole life, like obviously going to like how many like parties, functions, whatever, there's always like a dance performance or something. It wasn't until I'd say I was about like 14 or 15 when I was in a youth group called Youth for Christ. And then in that youth group, obviously there was so many people that they had to create like regions and like sectors and stuff like that, where they'd make like a big competition, and it was called the pre-conference, and that's where it would be like region versus region. So they had like the sports side and they had the art side. And so I was like, you know what, I'll do dance in this one, but I'll also play ball and volleyball at the same time. So I did like the sports too and the dance. But it was like through that I met a lot of like my closest, like some of my closest friends, and also meeting like a bunch of people within like the dance community through this youth group. Like, yeah. But it wasn't until I'd say I was about like in university where like my eyes were open to like everything else. Like that's where when I went to Ryerson, that's when I was introduced to like Ouch, the competition. Ouch is Ontario University competition of hip hop. And it was every university had a hip hop crew and would compete against each other, and the winner would always host it in their city. I'd say that's where I started like training a lot more. And then it wasn't until I was technically 22 where I actually took it seriously in like the professional route. So I'm technically a late bloomer when it comes to like, I want to do this professionally within like the industry itself. And then as for the styles, it was mainly choreography, hip hop. Obviously, because I watched You Got Served like 15 million times, you had to practice every routine from the actual video. And Step Up, oh my gosh. Step Up 2, actually. Step Up 2 was way fire than Step Up 1. I just had to put that out there. But it was that. And then this one style called Crump, which stands for Kingdom, Radically Uplifting, Mighty Praise, which I was introduced by a guy named Martin Dizon. Martin, you get a shout out for this one. He introduced me this like one documentary series called Rise, and it was such like a very aggressive but like spiritual and like emotional dance. I could just feel the energy through the screen. So what is my thing out of like all my dance friends? And then Martin's like, Crump. And I was like, Crump? Okay, let's do this. And then next thing you know, I'm watching Missy Elliott's, which one is it? I'm Really Hot. And I was like, oh, they're crumping in that one. And then Chris Brown is crumping and Give Me That. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, wait, this is an actual dance style. And I was like, okay, it got me immediately. And so from there, it's like I kept on like honing that skill, joining a few crews within the crump community, even creating a crew with like two of my closest friends within the west side of Toronto, and being one of like the three main groups of crump that started in Toronto. And then from there, put it down when I started focusing a lot more on like being an industry dancer and choreography. But still, krump will always be there for me. Like, it's always there. It's like, it's a part of me. So it's like, I never like dash it aside. It's always like in my choreo or like how I move, so. It's technically a dance that's meant for emotion. It was when Nicole, my partner, and I went to LA, and we went to take classes, but we went for a vacay at the same time because I didn't want to go to LA to dance. I wanted to go to LA to chill. And then we're like, let's take classes because we're here. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, oh, there's this one krump class at Movement Lifestyle. You should take it. And I was like, oh, it's junior tie-dyes. I'm going to take it. And I was like, yes, get it from the source. I need it from the source. So then we went. He didn't end up teaching the class, but he got a sub, and it was another member of Tie-Dyes' crew. His name is Baby Tie-Dyes. His name is Sherwin, and he taught the class, and it changed my mindset on krump like tenfold. It was a beginner krump class. Like, okay, let's do this. And like the entire time, I felt like a noob. Like, I was like, and I said, I krump since I was 16, and this is the point where I'm like, what? I'm 29. Yeah, at that time, because this was 2019. And then I was like, wow, I've been lied to for 13 years. I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, so the way that I learned is totally different. Oh, this is the actual source. And I was like, yeah. And it actually changed my perception on dance. And he explained, it was like, within dance, the universal language is music. And then the second one is the emotion behind it. Right? So it's like, we all listen to music, but it's because of the emotion that everyone can actually understand the same vibe, right? Just that 1 hour, I felt like as if I had a third eye open. Like, that was definitely a big moment. Mentors wise, Martin Dizon, he was the old director of this one dance company called For Real Dance Company. But he was my mentor from like, especially because we've known each other since I was like 13. And like, he's been like my big bro ever since then. So it's like, he will forever be like the mentor, like the big bro I look up to no matter what. When it came to going within the industry, that's where you had like Shavar Blackwood, Leon Blackwood, those guys. They broke my skull when it came to like really being like serious about dance. Like when it came to like the adequacy of dance. AC Mensa, she was my dance mama. And it was cool because like I never had like a female figure as like a dance mentor. She actually helped me train like with my like afro, especially like connecting me to my Ghanaian roots too. So it's like for her, and like her incorporation of like her traditional dance training plus like afro movement and like afro beats and like now the modernized and like very popularized afro dances that are coming out is like because of her. And like it was also like, I'd say she played the biggest part in like helping my dad respect me as a dancer too, because like my dad was like very like about dance and stuff. And then it wasn't until I did this like one theater production with AC, and it was very like focused on like the immigrant journey of an African into Canada, and like my dad got to see it, and he actually wrote a paper for this one newspaper. He actually wrote an article on it, and like for him, he was like very proud. He was like, okay, you're doing the right thing. At least you're like accepting like your Ghanaian side as well. And I think that was like a big thing, especially within dance. I think because there was so many Filipinos dancing, I really didn't like tend to chill a lot more with like the Ghanaian dancers, because there weren't really any Ghanaian dancers within the industry, especially. So it wasn't until I heard about Touch, and like Touch being a friggin' Ghanaian, I was like, oh, you're Ghanaian this whole time? Everyone told me you're Jamaican. And he's like, nah, I'm Ghanaian. My name's Kojo. I was like, it makes sense now. I was like, that's why. I was like, oh. But yeah, they each Yeah, Touch was all about performance. Shavara was about performance. Leon was about performance. I'd say from them, it was me. They were the ones that helped me hone my skills. Martin is more about the passion. AC was more about the culture. And then from that, it's like everything that we've been doing is about the passion, the culture, and the dance form. So like those are like the three things that we always have not taken. So in grade 12, I was taking this class course called Writer's Craft. We did this one project where it's like you get to choose any subject and like explain it. So my premise in this project was anybody can dance. And my English teacher at the time said he disagreed. He's like, not anybody can dance. And he's like this like Italian, half Irish teacher who loves dark humor, who loves horror films. Like he's just one of those like indie dudes. And he's like, and he looks like a nerd. And he's like, I don't think, anybody can dance. And I was like, anybody can dance. And we got into like a heated argument. And it wasn't until like our 10-year reunion where like after we started Run the Flex where I got to see him again. And then I was like, I run a dance company and it's meant for anybody to dance. And he's like, whoa. He actually went insane. The actual like background behind RTF started when I was like teaching my drop-in classes. And then a lot of people were like, because especially with like the drop-in formula, it's like if you're teaching, let's say once a week, I don't want to teach the exact same thing over and over and over again. So I decided to do like a few things where it's like I'll keep on adding every week. And like a lot of like the clientele would be like, ooh, I like this. I'd be like, all right, who was here for week 1? And then like 10 people raise their hand. Who was here for week 2? 5 people. And I'm like, all right, for those that were here week 1, you're going to start the dance first. Then you're going to move aside. If you're here for week 2, you're going to do that part of the dance. And you're going to move aside. Whoever did week 3, jump in, do that dance. And everyone, because it's week 4, we're all going to do this together. So it's like almost like a culminating act of just like giving a reason as to why people were dancing compared to just teaching like a combo every week. I was like, all right, let's create a journey for everyone. Like, let's give them a reason to work hard. And then from there, it's like, I just noticed that like sometimes an hour wasn't enough to give to like students. So then I was like, you know what? Maybe we could do something. So my partner and I, we ended up going on like my first vacation trip to Martinique. And then when we were in Martinique, that's in the Caribbean, it's a French colonized island. And her dad actually was like, you could like make a business out of this. And I'm in the background just like, I don't think so. And he's like, no, we're gonna like help it. Like he's gonna help us like set it up just to make sure we can do this. Nicole being the best and amazing person she is, like helping with the communications aspect. And she was like helping me. And then our first program started like 4 years ago, and it's been running ever since. And it's like, it's just a program geared to adults that want to learn or that are too scared to learn in an actual drop-in setting. And it's meant for them to actually get it compared to one and dones and just cut. It's like, if you really want to grow or like figure out like a new skill that you want to work on, it's the place for you.
There we go. Keep it going. Hey. Bring it low.
When it comes to dance, it's easier for me to teach adults, especially like, let's say the 9-to-5ers, because I was a 9-to-5er. And so for me, like, for example, like how I was explaining earlier, where I was like, I teach from like 8 to 3, then run to the studio to teach like 2 drop-in classes. And I'm like bust by like 8 o'clock. I'm like, I'm dead. Like, I want to go to bed now. Just the feeling like I'd walk into class and I was like, guys, I've had the worst day at work. And they're like, me too. And I'm like, okay, we're all on the same boat. Is anyone here trying to become a professional dancer? They're like, nope, I just love dancing. And I was like, Me too. And that was like right before Nick and I even stepped into becoming like self-employed artists, right? And like creating our own, like becoming entrepreneurs in that sense. It was like we both had full-time jobs and balanced dance at like becoming industry dancers while we had 9-to-5 jobs was like the most mind-boggling thing ever, because we couldn't do all the auditions, or we couldn't like go to every tech rehearsal because we had jobs, and we can't take a bunch of sick leaves, right? Because like that doesn't make any sense for us. So it was like for us, we were just like, this is just a hobby, but we love to hone our craft, so that's why we stuck through it. And so that same mindset actually happens with a lot of our Run the Flex members, where it's like, you know, I'm not trying to be the professional dancer. I have a full-time career, but I love to hone my craft, and I feel this is the way I want to do it. And it's like, that's where I'm like, I know that exact same mindset, and that's what attracted us to like the people that we teach. And it's like, that's why it's like, it's such an even playing field.
Out she came with the tight gold clip from the dark brown frame. She said she named Money Gina, see me up forget. The first time we met, me couldn't keep my eyes shut. She give me bling bling, I bring me woolly pot, I said.
The one thing that I'm worried about is reaction. There's a lot of fast reaction compared to reflection, or like doing like the due diligence of doing your personal research first before you actually go forth with things, right? There's a lot of pointing the finger without like I remember I used to say this to my students, like, you're pointing the finger at someone, but you got 3 fingers pointing back at you. And it's like, so like that was like one of the things I remember, like there's so much pointing of the fingers without actually like thinking, it's like, are you perfect? You know, like what are the things that you have to work on first before you can call out someone for their imperfections, right? That's, I think, but this is also a cool generation where activism is like at its highest peak, where it's like news is being like thrown to each other. Like everyone's like, yo, hear about this, can you talk about this? Hey, did you know about this? I think we just have to really figure out how to like open the playing field to make it more of a middle point compared to extreme right and extreme left. That's the biggest thing right now. Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of friends, and we're like, there's no such thing as being in the middle. It's either you're right or you're wrong. And it's like that is a scary moment, because like you could have so many different point of views for certain things, but it doesn't always mean that, like, let's say you're a bit like 1% to the right means you're an extreme right, or you're 1% to the left means you're an extreme left. It's like, no, there's like certain things that I fall with that. And I think there's a lot of right now the fear of being wrong. I think nobody wants to make mistakes, and everyone's scared of being proven wrong or being called out for doing something wrong, compared to just like accepting the flaw, but also help fix the flaw, or like grow together, right? It's like, you tell, like, a baby falls, you don't yell and you're like, why are you falling? You like help the child get up, and then you hold their hand and then you walk with them, right? You make sure it's okay and like grow together, compared to just like, well, you fell, bye. You know what I mean? It's like, that's what it is right now. Yeah, so it has to be reflection and reaction are like the 2 things. But this generation is very powerful when it comes to activism, though. I've been like listening to a bunch of podcasts and things, and it was like, one of the coolest lines I heard was, I'm not asking for you to be my hero, I'm asking for you to understand. That's it. It's like, just understand what I'm going through. Like, really feel it, compared to being like, I'm here to help change the world. Like, it's like, okay, whoa, that hurts. I felt that pain. Okay, I never want to feel that pain or give that pain to anybody else. What can I do to make that happen? Right? So it's like, I'd say like the empathy thing is like the biggest one that I'd say. It's like, especially for contributing to this like future, like into a better society as well. It's like, if we really understand each other and really like, that evens the playing field out. I think this also goes back to like what we were talking about, like influences and things from like generations. I think like religion played such a big role. It did play a big role, but it was like, technically I'm lucky that like I have family, like I have parents and family members that are so open. But it's like one of the biggest core values was even one of the golden rules, like love one another as you love yourself. Like that was like the biggest thing. And I think like that's the one that I've been trying to follow through with a lot and use that a lot, and like understanding relationships and like how to maintain relationships and how to keep the relationships that are needed compared to the ones you want. Next one, I think it's like, it's been such a big thing and I still fight it. I fight against myself on it sometimes. And it's like, stop comparing yourself and know that everyone has a different path. And so it's like knowing, like even like when people say like, you know, like the universe is doing, like the universe has a place for me and like that's the way I have to go with it. So it's like, yeah, I'd say it's the concept of like, do the things that you need, not the things that you want first, because the things that you want are going to happen after you do everything that you need, right? Biggest advice that I would have given myself, my younger self, was to take more risk, because I was very concerned about being like safe and like, yeah, especially like trying to achieve all these things to not just only please myself, but please my family. If I took certain risks, and I feel like if I was fearless to take the risk, that would have been way, way better.
Smile for me. Had a bad day, cause I pulled the dials for me. I'm all yours, give me yours, I'm a mouth to feed. Want more, give me more, girl, give it to me. Oh, that's what I want for the stress relief. Hold, on the gas, give me extra speed. I'm easy, my God, believe me, don't run. When the stuff get tough, I get extra feet. Good tag.